Welcome to Science with Shields. On this episode, we are talking about some winter weather. We're going to discuss snow ratios. So the first thing you're going to need for this experiment is some snow. So safety first, we always put on our safety goggles, even though we really don't need them for this experiment. But what you might need for this experiment is some gloves, because we are going to go outside and collect some snow. I've already done that, so we're going to just start this off. Again, a snow ratio is how much water is actually in snow, and how to find that out, we've got to melt the snow. So we've got some snow right here. We just collected it outside. It snowed today, so we've got that. You're also going to need a ruler and a clear container. So next is really simple. We're going to just take a spoon and we're going to put the snow in our container and measure it up to 2 inches. So I'm going to do that now. So you may want to, when you collect your snow, stick it in a bowl. If you can freeze it if you're not going to do this experiment right away, or you could easily, just as soon as you get inside, you want to like fill your container right then. So let's see here where we are. And it looks like we're pretty much at 2 inches of snow here. So next, super simple, we're just going to let this melt. Just sit and let it melt. So it's just going to have to take a little bit of time to melt. So you may want to mark down the time of when you start this experiment and to the point where you see that it is all melted. We started the snow experiment at 5:30, and it took until about 7:30 for all of that snow to be melted. So we do have it here. Now, if you don't want to wait that long to watch that snow melt, here's a little bit of a tip. You can stick warm water in it to melt it, but you just want to make sure that you measure that warm water before you stick it in, and you want to subtract that amount from the snow that melted in your measuring glass. So now let's measure it and see what our ratio ends up being. So we're going to take our ruler, and if we stick it here, you can see that it is just slightly under an inch of water, about 3/4 of an inch of water. So for every 2 inches of snow we melted in this storm, it means that it was an equivalent of 3/4 inch of water. You should always have a water amount that is lower than what your snow amount was. Again, the average ratio is 10:1, but in our experiment, it ended up being a lot higher. About 37% was water in that snowfall, and that's because whenever we did this experiment, it was a mixed snow event. So let's take a look at the graphic here, and we'll explain why you can have more compared to less. So the science behind it is the old ratio is 10:1. New ratio looks to be more about 12:1 in a typical storm, but this can be changed. Just to explain, if you have a wetter snow, you are going to end up having more water compared to if it's a drier snow. So how can you get a wetter snow? Well, that can be changed by the depth of a warm layer in the upper atmosphere. And if it is warmer in the upper atmosphere, then that means you are going to end up having more water at the end of the experiment. Now, wind can also travel snowflakes and break them up. And if it is a very windy day, you'll end up having less water at the end of your experiment. So more ice crystals in the cloud means a higher ratio, which means you'll have less water. If you have more super cooled water droplets in the cloud, that's going to mean a lower ratio, and you're going to end up with more water. So always remember, at the end of the experiment, you're always going to have less water compared to the amount of snow you stuck in your glass. And if you do try this experiment, please make sure to let me know. I'd love to hear feedback. And if you like this episode of Science with Shields, check out all the other experiments on WCAJ Plus.